Well, hello again. Peter Saturday from Universal Dork back again today to talk about Bullies. In particular, this film from 1986, pretty shocking little gem, very overlooked that really never gets talked about. I'm a gigantic fan of bullies in cinema. I always am down to watch a good bully story, and damn, does this one have an interesting one that goes a little bit off the beaten path of what we normally see in your average bullies film, especially ones from like the 1980s. This one is a true oddity straight out of British Columbia, Canada. It's got a lot of heart, it's got a lot of action, and it's also like, obviously, the bully story is usually a revenge tale. This one serves up some pretty sweet revenge, I will tell you that much. And some of the shit that the bullies do in this film really warrants it all. So everything that you see that this kid go through with his family, all the stuff with the bullies that goes down in this one, wow, it really got me fucking fired up. And that to me really signifies a really good bully tale. So yeah, I used to own Bullies on VHS, and I sort of, I guess, upgraded to this, even though this DVD version of it, which I never knew even existed, that's why I got rid of my VHS copy, has kind of a crappy cover. I mean, I think that's pretty terrible looking. But it's one of those platinum DVDs, and you can find, you know, kind of some pretty cool stuff that you thought was only on VHS from Platinum. They usually deliver some pretty cool stuff. Now, this thing needs a Blu-ray very badly. I could see like Vinegar Syndrome or like Severn or someone like that putting this thing out. And if they do put this out on Blu-ray, I would highly suggest going with its original VHS cover, which is a lot better than this. This makes it look like some cheap TV movie, and far from it. Bullies is an absolute banger. Directed by Paul Lynch, who is also most famous probably for Prom Night. Not one of my favorite slasher films, but it is an iconic one. And of course, one of my other favorite things about this film is that it also stars Olivia d'Abo. Wow, now she, back in the day, I was so crushed out on her. She is just absolutely gorgeous. She stars in this film, and this guy right here, he's like a teenager who moves to a new town. Everything sort of sucks there. One kind of like saving grace for him is that in this little shitty small town also lives Olivia. All right, so why don't I just read you the actual plot synopsis off of this nifty platinum DVD here. You ready for this? Let's do it. The Morris family moves into a peaceful mountain community to find a quieter, safer way of life. Unfortunately, they soon discover that the town is totally controlled by a clan of fiendish thugs, the Cullens, who welcome the new family by savaging the mother, tormenting the father, and beating up the girlfriend of their teenage son, Matt, who survives the ordeal and soon gets his violent revenge. Now, that's a pretty simple plot, but this movie does have a lot more kind of like working pieces to it. Even though, you know, everything, it kind of follows almost like the Karate Kid style, you know, trajectory, which I love. You know, this kid moving to a new town, kind of like Daniel-san. And, you know, he does meet some pretty cool people there. At first, he's very upset, you know, kind of resents his parents for taking him to this like small podunk town, this like mountain town in the middle of nowhere. He thinks it kind of sucks. He's got this new dad of his who he thinks is sort of a wimp, this like stepdad, of course. And his dad is, you know, kind of a passive dude. And the dad and the son are going to go through some major changes throughout the story in this film. The family, the mom and the dad are kind of like searching for like, you know, a simpler way of life by taking over this supermarket that the stepdad inherits from his family. So he kind of like quits his office job and decides to go there thinking everyone's going to have a great time while he runs sort of like supermarket corner store type of place. Seems a little bit like a risky decision to me, but I guess this would be sort of akin to someone like leaving, you know, their office job for like paradise. And I think that that's what this family is thinking is going to happen in this town. Now they get there and everything at first is, you know, pretty nice. They meet all the town folk. They're all really sweet. They're making friends. The kid's still not enjoying himself too much, but they end up going out one night to see this country band play at this bar and like this restaurant. So they're all hanging out there, having a great time, you know, dancing and stuff. And all of a sudden, the Cullen family or brothers, they're basically like grown-ups. They enter this bar to go, you know, out drinking, go to the exact same bar where they're doing like the dancing and having a great time. And as soon as they get there, it is clear that everyone within that establishment, you know, the fun all comes to a halt. Everyone knows that the whole tone of the place has changed because these guys run this damn town. They even like kind of tell the police what to do. The police officers there are like afraid of them, and they're out to fuck with whoever they want. And that is where one of the very first incidents takes place, where one of these, Cullen guys starts messing with the kid's mother, and the dad sort of doesn't stand up for her. And when I say messing with her, getting very suggestive with her, making the whole thing uncomfortable. The kid is kind of like watching his dad not do anything, and it's making him more angry. And things only escalate and get worse from here because, like I said, this kid here meets Olivia Diabo. And suddenly, after meeting her, he's kind of like enjoying the idea of being in this town, which I don't blame him at all. But she is actually part of the Cullen family. And that makes these guys really mad. So they all start fucking with this kid too. And like I said here, this one is different from a movie like Karate Kid or some of the other bully movies because these bullies are basically like grown-ass men fucking with a teenager and messing with him, messing with his family. And this teenager makes another friend, sort of like this Mr. Miyagi style character, this kind of like Native American, Native like Canadian older man that he starts making friends with, who is, like I said, kind of like the Mr. Miyagi character, kind of takes the kid under his wing, starts teaching him like a little bit about like spirituality and also teaching him how to like spearfish and do all sorts of really cool shit that this kid would have never imagined. And he really does become like a Mr. Miyagi style character. The kid's hanging out with him all the time. But as we go further into the story, things get even darker. On Letterboxd, I think I gave this film 4 stars. I definitely gave this 4 stars upon the second viewing of it. But I see a lot of people on Letterboxd don't like it. It kind of perplexes me, but I guess some of the reasoning behind maybe giving it a lower star rating on Letterboxd is some of the dark directions that this takes. Like when this kid and his mom are actually like attacked by the Cullens, they assault his mother in, the worst way with the kid like right in the room. And that is one of the darker moments of this entire film. It's really disturbing. Going to give you a little bit of warning about that if you're thinking of watching this with like a group of friends. It's not like, overtly graphic or anything. It's mainly implied because you don't see the acts actually happening. The kid is kind of like behind these swinging doors, like those little doors with the little, slits in them, kind of like bar doors. He can hear that his mom is being attacked by these men who have their way with her. And that's the point of the movie where my blood really began to boil because I was imagining being in this kid's situation and what I would do. Because this kid decides that if the dad is not going to stand up for the family after this happened, nowhere else to turn. The cops won't help him. He's going to take care of matters himself and sort of infiltrate the Cullen compound all by himself. And that's where we really get to the finale, which is very satisfying after the things that you see unfold. They really tug on your heartstrings here. There's some pretty good action sequences to it, like the end of the film when the stakes are, the most high. Things get pretty rad. There's some cool like explosions. There's some pretty good fighting. There's some good like kind of like gory moments too. A pretty good team up that goes on at the end. Who's going to make it out alive? Anyone's guess here in Bullies. Even though the stepfather is, I guess, portrayed as a wimp, there is a certain line in the sand that is drawn even by him. And that's what's interesting is you kind of get to watch the kid and his stepfather kind of have to work together and team up and both have sort of a coming of age sort of moment going on here. So yeah, a total treat watching this for the first time when I found it on VHS. And then seeing it again, this thing has just got some like very visceral, savage moments in it that really separate it from a lot of the other bully flicks. This one goes like above and beyond a little bit and goes into some darker territories. And it does feature some other kind of strange moments in here as well. There's a scene in here where the teenage character, this guy right here, and then Olivia Diabo, they're going to get busy. And she kind of goes into his house, into his parents' room, and takes like this sort of like sexy nightie of his mom's to put on and, get him in the mood, which would be very hard for me to do. But then again, when you're like a teenager, like 15 years old and you have just like raging hormones, because it probably doesn't matter. You're probably like,
I don't really care. Put my mom's nightie on. It's fine with me.
It's still pretty weird, but he goes out and they have sex in this weird like boat in the middle of the woods that's like abandoned, where she kind of like hangs out. And of course, when people in the 80s have sex in films, bad things tend to happen. And that's sort of like the catalyst for even more mischievous, savagery from the Cullens. This movie could really use a restoration. I mean, it's, in the mountains and this city and everything, a really beautiful part of British Columbia. It'd be really nice to see these forests and these mountain ranges, come to life with like a new scan or like a 4K or something like that. This film really is ripe for the picking. This would be the perfect movie for Vinegar Syndrome to put out there. I think people would eat this up. And of course, they would be a little bit shocked as well. So check this thing out. You'd probably find it streaming. I bet it's like on Tubi or something. Or you could probably buy this for like super cheap, or the VHS if you collect VHS. So, all right, that's it for me today. Had to talk about the Bullies. There are more Bully movies that I want to get into. I kind of want to do like a top 10 of my favorite Bully films. You tell me what yours are. And one of my next videos soon that I do, I'll cover some of my favorite Bully movies. Obviously like Karate Kid and stuff like that. Don't really want to go into that because we all know that so well. So we're going to look for like more, underrated Bullies, films that have not been talked about as much. And, I've been doing videos here as well recently, doing more like newer reviews and talking about like, why Evil Dead Burn sucked, and, bring Robert Englund back as Freddy Krueger, stuff like that. More like modern stuff. But this is really covering stuff like this is really what I want to be doing here. But unfortunately, doing videos about movies like Bullies, they don't always get you the most views. But who gives a shit? That's where my heart lies, is with stuff like this. All right, that's it for me today. Have a great one. I will see you next time.